I don't know, guys. If this was, it's something Julie and I talked about, if this was just Tyler Robinson on the Losi Center roof with Granddad's 30-06, there were some of the worst coincidences of all time that took place in the moments leading up to it and in the minutes afterwards. What a weird coincidence that your body cam footage just happens to die. What a weird coincidence. Nobody happened to be looking at any of the rooftops when everyone acknowledged that the rooftops looked particularly dire. What a weird coincidence that in the immediate aftermath, Terrell Farnsworth runs and jumps on a concrete embankment and starts filming himself, declaring that they got Charlie, they killed Charlie, they shot Charlie. What a weird coincidence that Frank Turek just happens to pull on his hat right before Dan Flood looks at him pulling on his hat and steps forward and touches his upper arm. That's a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that Terrell Farnsworth just happens to stamp down on the ground for no apparent reason that we can discern right as the bang happens. What a weird coincidence that Philip Goldsberry Jr. just happens to shield his face and eyes right, like a half a second before it happened. What a weird coincidence that Rick Cutler tugs on his sleeve exactly as it happens. Lots of weird coincidences in that moment. It's possible they are just weird coincidences. But the more weird coincidences that we keep identifying, the more, and frankly, it's a weird coincidence that Charlie Kirk was supposed to be at Utah State University 20 days from now. And those are the two cops kind of overseeing the scene as it's being destroyed. That's a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence. The more weird coincidences that pop up, the more you start wondering, were these coincidences at all? Were these coincidences at all? Or was there some sort of cascade of checkoffs? And Hunter Kozak just happened to look at Brian Harpole and pull down on his glasses? What a weird coincidence. Frank Turek just happened to go to his hat and grab his hat to adjust it and then scratch his face? What a weird coincidence. Did Dan Flood just happen to look at him doing that and then look the other way and then step forward and touch his arm like milliseconds before the bang happened? What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence. I don't by any means suggest I know exactly what happened. I don't by any means suggest that all of these people were involved in some capacity. But if we're going to talk about weird coincidences, what a weird coincidence that Andrew Colvett just happened to run a pre-record for the second hour of the Charlie Kirk show that day. Well, that's a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that an airplane just happened to fly from Provo, Utah to where Andrew Colvett lives, Santa Barbara, and then to Scottsdale, just in time for someone to catch a plane from Scottsdale to Provo. What a weird coincidence. Who was on that plane? What a weird coincidence that somebody at the airport tells Candace Owens that he cannot confirm or deny whether Erica Kirk was in his office or in his building the moment it happened. What a weird coincidence. Why wouldn't he be able to say no? Why would you think she was here? We sell airplanes. We're an airplane brokerage. If you want a commercial aircraft, you come to the right place. If you are looking for Erica Kirk, that's nonsense. Why would she be here? What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that when she's challenged on where she was the evening of September 8th, she provides an alibi for where she was the day of September 9th. A weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that Blake Neff says initially he spent the night in Orem, Utah. And later realizes the gravity of that implication and decides, no, in fact, I was in Salt Lake, Utah. What a weird coincidence. And what a weird coincidence that there was a bald man seen driving a Dodge Challenger in Orem, Utah that night. And he had 3 passengers. What a weird coincidence that Blake Neff shows up at the hospital with 3 passengers. Danny Phillip, Mikey McCoy, and Nate Walker. What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that Blake doesn't know where he went when he flew into Salt Lake City that morning. Despite the fact that there were planes coming from Scottsdale to Provo, he decides to go from Scottsdale to Salt Lake on the earlier flight, but doesn't know where he went after landing. Got in a car, marked time. What a weird coincidence. What a weird, weird coincidence. This is this cascade of weird coincidences. Everybody seems to have an imperfect recollection of just about everything. And at some point, you have to stop and ask yourself, are these coincidences? What a weird coincidence that we happen to catch a Dodge Challenger at the scene, but we can't get a clear image of the person exiting the Dodge Challenger. What a weird coincidence that the guy who is the boyfriend, alleged boyfriend, purported boyfriend of Tyler Robinson can't identify him with a reasonable degree of certainty initially when he sees 6 pictures of his face. What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that he wasn't available to testify. What a weird coincidence that he just happened to take a picture of the pre-confession, the pre-event confession note. He just took a picture of it. And what a weird coincidence that he has no idea what happened to it, but it ended up burned. Can't find the note. Someone set it on fire. Who? I don't know. I never saw it again. I don't think I ever saw it again. What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that Lance Twiggs' DNA is all over all the evidence. That's weird. What a weird coincidence that Tyler Robinson's DNA is the most degraded of all the DNA. That's a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that they took the caution tape down shortly before midnight when the purported arrival of Tyler Robinson was around 12:47 p.m. to go back to the scene of where the rifle was recovered. And then they put the caution tape back up the next day. That's a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that they find items at the Losi Center, or at the library bus stop. And they send them off for DNA testing because they seem suspicious. But what a weird coincidence that it just happened to be one of Charlie Kirk's security people, his detailees, they said. That's weird. That's weird. What a weird coincidence that Mikey McCoy was supposedly the general in charge of everything, the admiral. And then later it comes out that we see video footage. He doesn't show up for a long time afterwards. I thought he was barking orders. Thought he was the man of the hour. A weird coincidence. A really weird coincidence. There's too many weird coincidences for me. I sit back and I look at this and I think, no, this is too many weird coincidences. What a weird coincidence that we were told for 10 months that Tyler Robinson confessed to his parents, and that was one of the main reasons why we knew he was guilty. And then when it came time to put up or shut up, they shut up because they didn't put Tyler Robinson's parents on the witness list and they didn't call them to the preliminary hearing. And so we are pretty safe to believe he didn't tell them that. And that's not why he turned himself in. What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that when he did turn himself into the Washington County Sheriff's Office, that video footage just happens to be unavailable. That's weird. What a weird coincidence that a local news station asked for a copy of that, I believe, because everybody in town was saying he did not turn himself in at 9. He turned himself in well before 7 o'clock. And so they asked for the footage so they can answer the question once and for all, what time he turned himself in. And the Washington County Sheriff's Office refused to turn it over. And then when they refined the request and broadened their request to in an attempt to get anything, Washington County says, oh, doggone it, it's beyond our retention period. What a weird coincidence. They just happened to delete the footage. That was their story. And then what a weird coincidence when we find out they didn't delete it at all. They still had it. We saw a piece of it at the preliminary hearing. They lied. What a weird coincidence that they lied to the news media about whether or not they had that footage. What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that somebody at Cowboys Steakhouse in Panguitch, Utah, close to 10 o'clock p.m., identifies Tyler Robinson by voice, by face, remembers what he ate, remembers what time he left, produced a receipt. What a weird coincidence. Because according to his text messages, he was supposed to be sitting back in Utah monitoring the scene, trying to recover the rifle. What a weird coincidence. For an open and shut case, there are a lot of weird coincidences. And at a certain point, you got to throw up your hands and say, guys, this needs to be investigated a little better. I mean, frankly, what a weird coincidence that one of Tyler Robinson's lawyers is related to one of the people who was there that day, allegedly. I don't know that I've ever seen proof of that, but it's stated so often as fact, and I'm not aware of anybody ever saying that's not true. That's a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that the medical examiner, his wife, cosplays as a furry. So does Tyler's live-in cosplays as a furry. That's what we're told. What a weird coincidence that is. How many medical examiners' wives are furries? I mean, it's not a lot of them. I think Joseph Scott Morgan told me there were like 600 in the country. What are the odds that one of them is married to a furry who writes scholarship on furrydom? What a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence. All these new people. What a weird coincidence that the special agent in charge in Utah was fired not terribly long before this and a new one was installed. What a weird coincidence that we have a brand new judge who was just appointed by the governor. What a weird coincidence. This is all weird. And so when people sit back and sort of ask questions, frankly, what a weird coincidence that all these weird Google searches were done ahead of time. That's weird. That's really weird. That identify people by name who were there that day or affiliated in some capacity with this story. What a weird coincidence that Charlie Kirk's medical records were transferred to University Hospital in Provo. Why? Is this normal? Is this something that hospitals routinely do, is sort of bomb their medical records into someone else's system, unaware, for no reason whatsoever? In the age of HIPAA? In the age of everybody protect medical records at all costs, we're just going to fire off patient medical records to emergency departments in other cities for no apparent reason. People who've never been to that hospital, who are now dead and will never go to that hospital. We're just going to bomb his medical records over there. Why? That's really weird. What a weird coincidence that at the moment it happened, an elderly gentleman named George Hodgson Zinn stands up and starts screaming, I did it, I did it, I did it, and is tackled, and all the police response goes to him. Well, that's a weird coincidence. What a weird coincidence that Jack Hibbs's brother was one of the first people to announce that he was there. Jack Hibbs's brother was there, and then Jack Hibbs is one of the first people to announce that Charlie Kirk has passed, and Victor Marx, and Benjamin Netanyahu. That's weird. That's weird. When you look at all of it, when you put the whole story together, yeah. Tyler's DNA's on the gun. We get that. We understand that. Trust me, bro. We got that. Yeah. Tyler lived in that house, and so his DNA is on the tools and the towels. We got it. Do you have any explanation for all the rest of this stuff? The totality of all these weird coincidences, when you put them all together, does anybody's red flags and alarm bells start going off and saying, yeah, what the hell's going on here? What's happening here? Why are all of these weird coincidences happening? And what a weird coincidence. They paved over the crime scene 5 days later, dug it up the following day or a day after. That's weird. That's weird. What a weird coincidence that they stripped the SUV and sold it like immediately. What a weird coincidence that Frank Turek told a police officer, you can't have this piece of evidence. I'm giving it to his wife. What? That's his story. I believe we've played it on air. That Frank Turek discovers the necklace that Charlie was wearing when he died, that I very much think should be in evidence. And he was asked by a police officer to hand it over, and he said no. That's his story. I don't know how anyone looks at this and says, yeah, open and shut. Open and shut. No question, open and shut. What are we even doing? Why are we even having a trial? Go ahead and stick a needle in his arm right now. We are bloodthirsty and we want this man dead. That's what they're telling you. And they want to disregard every one of these coincidences and 100 more just like them. I'm not willing to look the other way. I look at this and I think, no, this case is very much not open and shut, and we owe both Tyler Robinson and Charlie Kirk a thorough examination in what exactly the hell happened. I mean, frankly, if you're going to go on to weird coincidence, what a weird coincidence that Chrissy shows up with mints exactly as Tyler Robinson's leaping over the wall and getting into place. And Brian Harpole just doesn't eat the mints, puts the mints in his pocket, looks around, checks out his security team, and then repositions himself closer. So he has a more direct line. I don't know if it's so he has a more direct line, but he positioned himself in a place where he had a more direct line to get behind the table in the shortest amount of time possible. That's a weird coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. That is weird. I don't know how you look at all this and not be remotely curious about the answers to any of these questions. I haven't even gone into the fact that there were X accounts and Discord chats about something's going to happen to Charlie and this and that. I don't know how common that was. Charlie was a pretty high profile public figure. Maybe that kind of chatter happened all the time, every time he went anywhere. I don't know. But you don't even need stuff like that to say, hey, this needs to be investigated a little more closely. We need to take a little closer look at all this stuff. And what a weird coincidence. I'll end my coincidence chain with this. What a weird coincidence that social media was activated in what I believe is an unprecedented fashion to attack anyone investigating this, to call them names, call them stupid, call them demonic, evil, accuse them of crimes, just because they want to know the answer, just because they want to know what the hell's going on. Just because they look at these coincidences and think, yeah, these should be looked at. I mean, if they're just coincidences, there's going to be good explanations for all of them. So let's just ask the question. Where were you? Why'd you do that? And instead, what we get is a relentless assault on anyone asking these very basic questions. Very, very basic questions. A relentless assault. It's I think, unprecedented in a crowdsourced investigation. I've watched a few of these unpack. I was around for the Adnan Syed investigation. My sister was eaten up with that, Nurse Casey. And so I saw and talked to her about what she was learning, and I got a little involved in it and looked at a little of the stuff as it was happening. And I don't recall anybody jumping online and saying anybody looking into the murder was evil and demonic and deserved to go to jail or was somehow going to be. I mean, I just don't recall that happening. Everyone was like, well, did he do it or not? Let's figure this out because we've got somebody in prison for life and we probably want to make sure we got the right guy. And if we don't, we should not have him in jail for the rest of his life. He's already been there 20 years. We should get this guy out of there if he didn't do it. I mean, that's pretty basic. This coordinated, relentless, frankly, 100% pro-Zionist position that Tyler Robinson killed and planned and executed Charlie Kirk by himself with a 30-06 from the Losi Center roof. I'm not aware of anybody who's opposed to the Iran war who believes that. It's like 1-to-1. It's only those people who are really pushing that narrative. That's weird. That's weird. You figure if it's a psyop, they'd throw like 5 or 10 people in there who are against the Iran war who also would be sort of paid to go out there and push the Tyler Robinson narrative, but there just aren't any. I mean, there's just none. And none that I can find. Maybe some offhanded person here or there, but there's not like a coordinated group of them. It's like, do you believe we should obliterate all Persian people? Yes. Do you believe Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk? Yes. Yes to both answers. Absolutely. Yeah, so you've rarely find anybody with a split opinion on those two issues. Leads me to believe they're related. Leads me to believe they're related. I hate to do it, but if you've not liked the program, please do. It's the easiest thing you can do. Just tap a button. If you're watching by TV, I think you might have to hit an option or a down arrow or something, but you can go and click the like button. That helps the program quite a lot. Helps the distribution, lets YouTube know you enjoyed what you saw. If you've not subscribed, now's a great chance. Now's a great chance. Go hit the subscribe button. While you're there, you can click the down arrow. It'll give you an option to click notifications. You can click all, and you'll know every time we go live. I really don't post videos, so there's no other notifications. I'm not going to like bomb you with notifications. Really, the only time you'll be notified is when I'm going live. And 30 minutes maybe before I go live. The other thing you can do is join the program. If you go to the members page and hit join, it's a small nominal monthly amount, but it gives you access to all the members content and live member shows in real time. I haven't decided yet if tomorrow will be a member show or if I'm going to wait until Friday. The reason I would wait until Friday is I traveled a lot. I was up very early Saturday, traveled all day